Swithuns Way is a long-distance walk of 55 kilometres or 34 miles, linking the North Downs Way in Farnham with the South Downs Way at Winchester. The path, which roughly follows the route of the old Pilgrim's Way, was opened in 2002. The St Swithuns Way starts at Farnham Station and enters the town centre, heading towards Farnham Castle, then turning off Castle Street to enter a narrow alleyway. The way joins a path at the rear of a car park which climbs gently before turning by the UCA College to cross a field, then eventually emerging on a narrow lane by some houses. The way now follows a mixture of country lanes and tracks before entering Hampshire near Dippenhall Farm. The St Swithuns Way is named after the 9th century Bishop of Winchester, who was a tutor of King Alfred the Great. When Swithin died, he requested he be buried outside the church, but after he was canonised he became popular, and against his wishes he was moved inside. This was followed by a period of bad weather, which led to the myth that should it rain on St Swithin's Day, there will be 40 days of rain thereafter. At Dippenhall, the route follows a residential lane, then joins fieldside paths, passing a sign which seems to indicate it is 53 kilometres to Farnham. The route joins a country lane for a short distance and then drops down to pass through woodland, a small hamlet and over a muddy paddock en route to the village of Bentley. Bentley featured in the TV docudrama series which looked at the day-to-day lives of several residents of the village. The village of Bentley was home to Harold Sanderson, the owner of the White Star shipping line, which included the ill-fated Titanic. Bentley was also the home of Lord Baden-Powell, the founder of the Scout movement, who lived at Pax Hill. Pax Hill is now a nursing home. From Pax Hill, the St Swithuns Way turns and crosses a field heading towards Coldry Farm. Coldry Farm was previously a manor house owned by the Bishops of Winchester, with part of the current building, now a private residence, dating back to the 14th century. From Coldry Farm, the way follows a quiet road before turning to cross fields by the Anchor Public House. The St Swithuns Way then enters an old driveway heading towards the impressive buildings which are now part of the Lord Treloar School and College, which is for disabled pupils. The school was set up in 1907 by Sir William Purdy, a Lord Mayor of London. The current school buildings were occupied in 1953. The St Swithuns Way next passes through the village of Upper Froyle and crosses a large field to run alongside an old Roman road. Not surprisingly, the route is now dead straight on its way to the village of Holborn. The Church of the Holy Rood at Holborn, which is past, has 8 bells, dedicated to former residents of Hampshire, including Jane Austen and the Reverend Gilbert White. The way continues straight on, passing through another branch of the Law School, before crossing a large sports field and entering the town of Alton. The St Swithuns Way passes through the High Street of Alton, and then carries on to go under the A31 to enter the village of Chawton, which was the home of Jane Austen for 8 years. Her house still remains and is now a museum dedicated to the author. The St Swithuns Way heads away from the village of Chawton and then joins the old Farnham Meon Valley railway line, which closed in 1955. The Meon Valley Railway ran for 36 kilometres or 22 miles between Alton and Farnham and was opened in 1903 and was closed to passenger traffic in 1955 and then closed completely in 1968. Much of the route now is a foot and cycle path. The way leaves the old railway and joins a lane which climbs gently towards Woodside Farm. After passing the farm buildings, the way then enters woodland on its way to the village of Farnham. On reaching 4 Marks, the way passes through a residential area before once again heading off into countryside paths and dropping downhill on its way to Old Down Wood. During the springtime, Old Down Wood can be quite spectacular, with its bluebells. After passing through Old Down Wood, the way now drops downhill to the hamlet of Gilbert Street, before climbing again and entering the village of Ropley. The village of Ropley contains many old buildings, with several dating back to the 16th century. The Church of St Peter in the centre of the village had parts of the building dating back to the Norman period. Unfortunately, a couple of months after I walked through the village, the church suffered a major fire, which destroyed the roof of the building and severely damaged the structure. On leaving Ropley, the St Swithuns Way once again crosses fields and then joins a country lane en route towards Alresford. The route heads back to the A31, which it crosses at a roundabout. It then joins a footpath which runs parallel to the road into Alresford. The path crosses a ford and then heads back to the main road and ends at the Ship Inn. Much of the final day's walk takes place on tarmac roads and starts at the Ship Inn and heads along a narrow country lane to reach the Cricketers' Public House near Alresford. It then continues onwards, passing old watercress beds. Watercress was a major product from the town of Alresford. This was transported to London along the railway, hence the name the Watercress Line. From the watercress beds, the path continues along the narrow track and then crosses a ford, before shortly joining a footpath climbing uphill. It then emerges on a road near the A31 and joins a lane heading towards the village of Ovington. Just before the village of Ovington, the River Itchen appears alongside the road, and shortly afterwards the St Swithuns Way is joined by the Itchen Way. The Itchen Way is a long-distance path of approximately 52 kilometres, 31 miles, following the River Itchen from its source near Hinton Ampner to Southampton Water. The St Swithuns Way continues to follow country lanes, now en route to Itchen Abbas and Abington Park. Shortly after passing Yaxington Farm, the St Swithuns Way at long last leaves the road and climbs uphill. It passes through a copse and heads down beside Abington Park Golf Course, before emerging once again on the road near the gates of Abington Park. Parts of the house at Abington Park were built in the 16th century. It has, however, been updated in both the late 17th century and 18th century. The house at Abington Park is open during the summer and on bank holidays. The way now crosses over the River Itchen and then passes by the unusual church of St John the Baptist at Itchen Abbas. Parts of this church date back to the Norman period. However, the current building was refurbished and rebuilt in 1867. Once again, the St Swithuns Way leaves the road and joins footpaths on its way to the village of Martyr Worthy and the church of St Swithin. The church of St Swithin at Martyr Worthy was originally built in the 12th century. However, it was rebuilt and refurbished in 1865. The bell tower was constructed in 1871, and this contains 3 bells which actually date back to the 17th century. The St Swithuns Way continues to cross fields and eventually drops back to the River Itchen before passing under the M3 motorway and then climbing again en route to Kingsworthy. Shortly before Kingsworthy, the St Swithuns Way now parts company with the Itchen Way and continues straight on to enter the village. In the village there is a church of St Mary. This dates back to the 12th century, but it was rebuilt by the Victorians in 1861, who unfortunately destroyed almost all of the old church. The St Swithuns Way now passes under 2 road bridges carrying the A3411. It then turns, rejoining the river, before turning again and heading towards the city of Winchester. The way now continues alongside a stream and passes beside residential areas, still en route to the centre of the city. The final few hundred yards of the walk are perhaps a little disappointing, because you are walking through heavily built up areas on the edge of the city, and then into the retail area, before finishing at the entrance to the cathedral.